You have access to the best father, and you can tap into that if you want to, and you will get the results of tapping into that.
What's up, my friend? First off, thank you for being here. You matter. You don't hear it enough, but you are awesome. The fact that you have paused to invest in yourself so that you can show up well for your family. We need more men like you willing to step into love and serve their families. Our world is in desperate need of men to love and serve their families well. 3 nuggets that hit me from my conversation with my friend Jeremiah Cooper today are: 1, the importance of teaching your kids not only what you know, but also what you wished you would have known. Being that father who is constantly learning and then sharing what you learned with your kiddos. 2, creating your home as a safe space for your kids' friends. And then 3, there is always hope in what may seem to be a hopeless situation. Welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast, where I interview truly incredible, remarkable fathers gaining wisdom from these men's stories for you and I to grow in our own craft. I'm your guide, Ned Schau, father to 5 kiddos, currently ages 13 and 19, and a husband to my rad wife, Sarah, working on our 21st year of marriage. So yes, I am in the thick of it, and I am working daily to rebel against the low expectations for fathers and create a world where fathers know who they are as they show up for their families. You and I have the greatest opportunity to impact our world through the way we embrace our fatherhood role. This episode is brought to you by The Adventure of Fatherhood, helping men discover their powerful fatherhood role and build their fatherhood skills. The role of the father is to serve, guide, steward, protect, and of course, find joy and have fun in the messiness of it all. Today's guest is my friend, Jeremiah Cooper. He is a husband, father, friend, and a man with a humble and passionate heart to love and serve all those that God puts in his path. Enjoy meeting my friend, Jeremiah. All right, Jeremiah, welcome to Fatherhood Field Notes. I've been looking forward to this conversation, man. How you feeling today?
Good. I'm probably more nervous than I should be, but that's the honest answer.
Well, now that you said it, butterflies are out. You're all good. Yeah, man. First question right out the gate is, how old do you find yourself today?
Well, I am biologically 47, and there are days when I feel 67, but I'm pretty close to 50-ish today.
What is feeling like 67? What does that mean?
Oh, it just, you burn the candle at both ends and you just feel drained and anemic and, that kind of thing. So too many things, too many yeses and not enough nos is, typically how I get in that spot.
Yeah. And then I guess the question is, like, if you would have said no, so this is the problem I find myself getting into. If you would have said no to those 10 things, would you probably have then said yes to 10 other things over here?
Yeah. I mean, usually it's my wife saying yes to things and
letting
then
you
saying,
know.
Oh, by the way, honey. Yeah. I put this on the calendar for us. Thanks, sweetheart.
Got you. All right. How many years you been married?
So cumulatively, what is this? This is 2025. I think we just hit our 20 years cumulative, but we were married for 8 years and then separated and divorced for 4. And then we've been remarried since 2013. So that's another 12. So cumulative 20.
So wild. So when I hear that, I'm like, man, the redemption, reconciliation, like hope, to me, it's funny because we're doing Advent as a family right now, and we were really wrestling as a family, like trying to define hope, because it's not like wishful thinking. It's not like, I hope we do good at the football game. And it's still, I still don't know how to define it necessarily. But when I hear married 8 years, separated and divorced, which like all of us have been with around people who, it's like, those are 2 big things and different. And then you're like, and back together, and it's 2025 now, since 13, so a fair amount of time. Dude, like, that means hope exists when you feel like there's no way. So if you could, I would love for somebody who's maybe right now either divorced, in the middle of a divorce, or just daydreaming about what it would look like to not be married to the person they're married to. What are a couple things that you would share from the perspective you have?
So, I mean, I think to answer the unasked question, hope is really knowing who it is that's in charge. Whose universe is this? What is his character and nature, right? That's where hope is founded. Anything that you're hoping in that doesn't start there, it is probably more like wishful thinking. Good. I've actually had a chance to talk with a number of guys kind of as I've been, as I was newly divorced, going through different programs and men's groups, and just trying to figure out what the heck happened, what's wrong with me, wrong with my wife, all of that. One of the things that I would find myself telling guys is, you can make your choices, but you don't get to pick your consequences. If you're thinking about blowing your marriage up, you have no control over who's sitting across the table from your kids. You've got no control. You've got
That's
no
the
voice in
consequence
that.
that you don't get to decide. You get to make the choice, but you
Yep,
don't
you
get to
don't.
choose the consequence, the result. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, you go through life and you think you know what you want. You think that this is so important. And honestly, at the end of the day, if your kids are doing well, nothing else matters. You could be, I don't know, impoverished, you could be sick, but if your children are doing well, like, life is okay. And it doesn't matter if you're the richest guy in the world and your kids are not doing well, you're not doing okay.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a great question. Well, this is a great question I'm about to ask you. That's funny. This is a great question for
Yeah,
us to wrestle with, is
sure.
the idea of, okay, if my kids are highest and best in a sense, okay, their well-being,
Mhm.
how important do you think it is that mom and dad, I don't want to say it always has to be mom and dad stay together, because there are circumstances that we
Yeah.
could, thousands we could unpack. But in general, this
Mhm.
idea of like, we're just going to stay unhappily miserable married for our kids'
Mhm.
well-being. Do you think that, I guess what's your answer to that is I think one of the best gifts you and I can give our kids is that I'm fighting for my wife, as difficult as it
Right.
is. I'm fighting for her, because what does that say to my son? What does it say to my daughter? So let's just say in general, we're not talking about the 1% of like seriously messy
Yeah.
stuff. What's
Yeah.
your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Since our remarriage, we have kind of this standard, and it's like, unless you've stretched your arms out on a cross and died for your spouse, there's still room to love.
Mm.
Right. And it really is a question of, am I living for me or am I living for something else? Because it's human nature. We're all selfish beings. Being a husband and a father, I've learned how selfish I really am. Jesus said, you can take your cross and follow me. And that means that we're listening to his voice, and you do have to listen to his voice. And there's psychopaths that, wives need to leave. It's not safe. Right? There's plenty of those edge cases. But by and large, the reason that we get divorced nowadays, I think, is because it's convenient, because we're not happy, because happiness and me, my comfort, my whatever, is the gold standard by which I'm measuring everything else. And you don't understand, like, there's a difference between happiness and
For
joy,
sure.
right? Happiness is this kind of momentary, fleeting thing. Joy is the long, that's when I say, like, if your kids are doing well, you're
Yeah.
doing well. My daughter, she's 20, she truly found Jesus, like, raised in church, or churchianity, or whatever you want to call it, follow these rules, do these things, but she truly came to the end of herself and met Jesus. Like, I can die a happy man with her. I've still got my other two, but like, joy is a race well
Yeah.
run. Joy is, I'm not pursuing this fleeting thing. It's a resting in the goodness of God and how that is now manifest in my family.
I had kind of an aha as you shared that, because you said room to love. I wrote that down, room to love. If we haven't died on a cross, we have room to love our spouse. And it's funny because I
Mhm.
think that most of us, or many of us in our marriages, are not seeking love in the marriage. We're seeking happiness in the marriage. But joy
Yeah.
is almost a result of love. And love is freaking hard work. Love is
Mhm.
patience, kindness, grace, a whole bunch of things that can only be experienced in a messy house, which is every house, if we're being
Mhm.
honest. Dude,
Yeah.
love it. Okay. Super good insight. Men, are we loving our wives well? Are we loving them? Anything that was important that you would share with a guy who's on the outs or divorced or whatever, that you're like, these were a couple things that really helped me get from we weren't married to we were married again?
Yeah, there were a couple, and I'll try to be brief, just kind of in the interest in time. The first, so when you get divorced, there's lots of baggage. There's lots of baggage that kind of created the divorce. Then there was lots of baggage that happened during the divorce. So as we were both getting to the end of ourselves and really kind of now approaching remarriage and the possibility and whatnot, I had a huge issue with trust. And I had a friend say that trust is not something that you have to give away. Trust is consistent behavior over time, and it's rebuilt. You can trust a little,
Mm,
right? And still continue to walk down that path and to give it time. So that was really, in a lot of ways, that was the thing that kind of opened the door of my
mm,
heart to be able to now entertain the idea truly of getting remarried. And the other thing is, I think it's First Peter, it says, husbands, lay your lives down the way that Christ laid his life down for the
mm.
church. And that doesn't mean you're just, you bend over and just do everything,
Right.
right? It means you lay your life down. So when it's cold outside and I don't want to go start my wife's car for
Mm,
her, I do it. Not because I want to, but because I know that that's what communicates
mm,
love. And we got remarried, married for about a year or in change, and we were headed for divorce 2.0.
mm.
We were on marriage 2.0, and we had these dear friends, Pam and Gary, that just we believe God brought them to California just for us. And he said that a woman cannot help but follow a man when she knows that she is unconditionally
Mm,
loved. And that was what transformed their marriage. And so I just started like intentionally loving and looking for ways to love, not just kind of incidentally or
mm.
accidentally, but like, what is it that communicates love to Wendy? Acts of service. How do you know what someone's love language is? How do they talk to you? How are they communicating or trying to communicate love to you, right? Acts of service. It's words of affirmation. And so looking for opportunities to intentionally love, not because I'm trying to manipulate, because that's how she hears it,
Right.
right? I'm trying to communicate love. So those two things were huge for us.
Man, it's so good. The last podcast I did was with my high school Bible teacher. He is 70 something. I think 78. I'm missing it. But he talked about unconditional love. So like an affirmation I'm saying right now is like those that have been placed in my care are unconditionally loved. And if I can do that with my
Mm,
wife, I mean, it's hard because our world doesn't want to hear that a woman's going to follow if I unconditionally love them. But it's like when I see my
mhm.
own four daughters, how they respond to unconditional love. I mean, that truth is that's in their
Yeah.
DNA. The thing is, like a lot of us men, this whole whatever toxic masculinity stuff is that we have kind of been loving conditionally. So that's where it's a little bit,
Hmm.
toxic is if I'm loving you out of conditions, then we're both always on performance. And then you're never going to fully give me your heart. And then I'm never going to fully feel like a
Yeah.
man because I haven't fulfilled my duty. So good, bro. Okay. You got three kids. What's the age spread?
Bella's 20, which will be 21 in March. Samuel is 18, and Hosea is 6. He'll be 7 in January.
Love it, dude.
So, yeah,
This quite the spread right there.
that's what I feel 67 sometimes.
All right, you just had your oldest daughter head off to college. My daughter Brooklyn's my oldest, and she's been away for a year and a half. I mean, she's comes home for this, that, and the other. But
Mhm.
but like, how is that transition as a father, seeing one of your kiddos kind of like start to go off into the world? What were some of the things that you were feeling going through during that?
It's mixed. This is why we raise them, right? Is not so that they can stay at home and depend on us for their
Right.
whole lives, but so that they can become, self-sufficient. And like I said, she truly met Jesus, recently. And I say recently, past couple of years. And so I don't have a lot of
Mm,
fear, but I miss her a
mm,
lot. She's my only girl. She's my oldest. There's a father-daughter bond that's different than, a
for
father-son
sure.
bond. So I miss her, but I'm just so proud of
Mm,
her just because of who she is, right? And that's part of my current joy is I messed up a lot. Really. I mean, I messed up a lot as a husband, I'm sure as a father, but I really have done, I mean, sincerely, to the best of my ability, I've tried to love my
mm,
children. I have an amazing father, not perfect either, but without a question, in my mind, he loves me to the point of death and beyond. Like, would do anything, right? Counts his life nothing compared to our, survivals. When I start talking about it, I start to
mm,
cry. So I won't anymore. But just that's the standard that I had, and so I knew, I'm really, really fortunate. I knew that I needed to be a good dad. I had
mm,
experienced a good father. So even in spite of all my screw ups, she's doing really
mm.
well. So the joy is just like she's in God's hands now. I mean, she's always been, I suppose, but
In
she's,
a different way.
she's
Yeah.
not, She's not out of the nest, but she's circling the nest, but she's leaving the nest. So yeah, I mean, that's,
Well,
I don't know. I don't even remember
yeah,
what
no,
your
well,
question
I'll
was.
tell you. So
So
the question was just about like how you're feeling with her leaving.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I really love your answer. And dads listening, okay, like your answer says, I don't have any fear, but I miss her a lot. And I
Mhm.
think, wow, okay, so if a dad has a 12-year-old daughter right now who's like, stepping into the middle school, she's coming downstairs in outfits that you're like, no, like there's starting to be this tension, this wrestling with like my relationship with you now through these teen years, in spite of the moments that you feel like you've messed up or whatever you want to
Mm,
call it. What are a couple practical things that dads could be thinking about or doing that would make it where
mm.
their daughter's 19, 20 leaves the house that they don't have a fear?
What do you do to not have fear? And I think part of it is
Mm,
perspective. We do have an amount of influence, and that influence is very high at the beginning and it drops to nothing at the end. And your job is to say, between this point and this point, how do I teach you how to be a self sufficient human that has a solid identity, knows who you are,
mm,
right? All of that stuff. That's kind of that at least should be the roadmap for a parent. And as I said, I had a really good dad. And one of the things when I was divorced is I came across this idea of wisdom. Proverbs. I was
mm,
searching and to figure out what the heck, clearly I'm an idiot because I didn't see this coming. And now what do I do? And so I came to Proverbs and I read it, and I read it in a way that instead of just reading the Bible, like I'm intellectually like reading it or I'm checking a box or whatever reason we have for reading the Bible, I was reading it as if it was manna from heaven or
mm,
like the truth of life, the reality of life upon which my very existence depended to align itself with. That's kind of how I
yeah,
felt.
heavy.
And it's so I made a point to teach my kids
Mm,
wisdom. I made a point to not just tell them, go, don't do this. I made a point to say, this is why. Start with truth, like the foundation of truth. And we oftentimes believe lies that need to be corrected in ourselves about ourselves. And so seek wisdom, right? What is the beginning of wisdom? It's the fear of God, and it is this, to seek wisdom, like know wisdom. So that I made that a really important part of our, rearing
yeah.
process, kind of post divorce. Like Ella asked me once, well, why is it bad to be gay? And I said, well, let me ask you, if is there a God or isn't there a God? If there isn't a God, yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. If there is a God, then that God is the one that created all the universe and have an opinion on the matter. And if that God has an opinion on the matter, that opinion probably matters, right? And so this is why that he had a design,
Mm,
right? And so when you live in that lifestyle, you're rejecting his design. And when you reject his design, you set yourself up for pain and sorrow and lots of other consequences. And that was kind of how just as an
yeah.
example, that's how I answered it. It wasn't a religious sort of thing. And I think that has been part of the way that she thinks, is not to just, do you know what I'm saying? She processes, she thinks, and it's
Yeah, and
truth.
that's wisdom, right? So it sounds as though you didn't approach teaching wisdom from a place of, "Hey kids, let's gather around. I've kind of got life figured out, so let me just let you know." It was more of like, "Let's openly wrestle through this together." And I would love for you to share, one of the things when you and I were talking, we were together in Breckenridge and we were just sitting in the living room talking. One of the things I was like, "Oh, I would love to have guys hear this," is one of the things that you did was started a weekly Bible study with your kids, and then it kind of
Mhm.
grew into your kids wanting to bring other kids, which is interesting. Like
Mhm.
even that fact alone, it's like, holy smokes, what were you doing that made it where your kids are like, can I bring the neighbor kid?
Yeah.
So what was your intention for starting that? And then how did it morph? Because it wasn't your desire to be like, I'm starting a youth group at my house necessarily.
Right. So as I mentioned, I was very intentional, I guess you might say, about trying to teach, my kids wisdom. And because I went through the divorce, here are the things that I wish I had known about
Mm,
how men and women relate, how identity works, like where I get my value, all those sorts of things. I was pretty good because those were the tools that none of us, I mean, I was not born with those tools. I didn't have parents that had those tools. Nobody taught me those tools. And so they were kind of hard won
mm,
lessons. And I was over the years just from the get-go following the divorce, I was very intentional about trying to give them all the tools that I didn't have, right? Things that I wish I had known. What I'd recognized is I had not done the same thing when it came to my relationship with Jesus
Mm.
and God. I mean, I told them and I'd shared, but there was a lot of just crap, garbage, things that that I wish that I had known. And so I had, maybe it's the Holy Spirit, I don't know. So God was like, hey, this is a good idea. It's like, okay, I'll do it. That sounds like a good idea. Thanks. So I had this idea to just write down all those lessons. And I didn't know how many really. I mean, putting pen to paper is kind of in itself a discovery process, right? So I just started writing the most important ones down, and then we have a TV in our living room. I'd put it up on the TV, and we kind of go through the notes. And so I think my son said, "Hey, can we invite friends to this?"
What was the thing that you shared with them that would have a 16-year-old boy say, could I bring my friend to this thing my dad's making me sit in our living room and read?
I would like to think that the content was so compelling,
Well, I mean,
but he, he he may have been bored. No, or I think he had some friends that, because I did all that stuff, the teaching of the
mm-hmm,
wisdom, like people were coming to him for advice,
mm,
relational
mm,
advice. And so he invited some friends, I think, who were kind of struggling in their own, figuring things out in their own
mm-hmm.
life. And that's kind of how it started. And then it just kind of grew.
And
Yeah.
2 years later, you're still doing it and there's still kids showing up at your house.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say that you're creating stability in the sense that you're there, right? And I think a lot of times us dads are like, what do I need to do? And it's like, you need to be there, be around. I would
Yeah.
challenge you guys listening, not necessarily like, okay, duplicate what Jeremiah's doing, maybe, but understand that fatherhood is a posture. And if there are teens in and out of your house, you have an opportunity to love them. It's funny because right now, so my oldest daughter that lives here, Violet, she's 17, she's a senior, and she like constantly has friends sleeping over, and they call me Father Ned. And when they're leaving the house, they're always like, at first it was like, how do I respond to this? They do it to my wife too, so it's all right. But they're like, love you,
Yeah.
love you, love you, like saying it until it's like, hey, I'm like, love you too, have, whatever. Um, but yeah, they are longing for I mean, so ultimately, I think that we're all born longing for our creator, right? And like you and I
Hmm.
get to
Hmm.
play this transitional role in young people to fill
Yeah.
that. But I do think that there's a point in time where we sort of like have to make sure they don't look at us as God, because then they're going to be greatly disappointed. you
Yeah.
know, so our opportunity is to point them to like, hey, this is who you are. And you kind of brought it up with Ella, your identity. I'm going to point you toward identity. I love what you're doing, dude. It like brings me so much joy because especially girls, oh, like boys matter, but boys are also like just rub dirt on
Hmm.
it, whatever. But
Walk it
girls
off.
are so special, man. It's fun. Like recently, I heard somebody say God gave mankind two gifts. He gave us Jesus and he gave us women. Like those were the two gifts he gave
Mhm.
us. And I love the posture of that. Like if we could look at these girls, my wife, my daughters, their friends as gifts, and like how do I love
Mhm.
them well? Any other thoughts on the things that we're talking about before I move to my next question?
You definitely relate to them different, right? As a
Mm,
father, I'm of a girl, or if a father figure of a girl. My goal is to tell her that she's, not creepily, but she's beautiful, right? She's wonderfully and beautifully made, because one of the girl's deepest
mm,
questions. Am I worth fighting for? Am I beautiful? Am I like desirable? That's a deep rooted question. The man question is like, can I do it? Am I strong
mm-hmm,
enough? Do I have what it takes? And so you through kind of those two, maybe oversimplified, but those two lenses, you need to reinforce the boys that they've got what it takes, and you need to reinforce with the girls that they are beloved and desirable, and it doesn't, all these other things that you think really matter don't matter so
mm-hmm.
much, like who you are. And that, if you can repeat it enough, they'll start believing it,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're beautiful. I love you. And then a couple things just, I mean, to share that I've been doing lately is like when one of the girls gets home, like, hey, tell me about your day. Right? Like girls want to talk, dude. So tell me about your day and then
Hmm.
listen. And then this may not work for everybody, but like if we're watching a show or something, I'll be like, I did this to my 13-year-old the other day. I'm like, hey, you want me to rub your feet? Because she plays volleyball, you know, she's super active, she's on the track team. And she's like, yes. You know what I mean? So just sit there and watch a show,
Mm-hmm.
just rub her feet. Dude, any guy could do that. You do
Yeah.
not have to be a freaking wizard to do those things that Jeremiah and I are talking about, but it's
Yeah.
consistency. Jeremiah, I love and hate this question, but I think it brings context and it helps bring a level playing field to fatherhood. What is it you do for a living? And I ask it because I don't want to be like, oh, I wonder what this guy's paycheck is. It's because
Mm-hmm.
I go, it doesn't matter if you are, you know, you're working at Costco, you're working at where you're working at IT somewhere, you run a, you know, company with 100,000 people. When you have a 16-year-old daughter, you have a 16-year-old daughter. So it kind of levels the playing field.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it that you do for a
Yeah.
living to provide for the family?
I'm a CEO / janitor.
Ooh, that sounds like a great book title.
I have a small, you might call it software development data processing company. So I don't know, 15 or so people plus some contractors here and there. And we develop software for manufacturers and distributors of pet food products primarily. So, and I've done some consulting on the side as well. But
And how long have you been doing it?
I've been in the pet food industry since 2003. And then I started the company's called Coop Diggity. Just a long story
I love it.
or funny story maybe. But 2012
Okay.
is when I started the company.
And then how do you balance, maybe you don't, whatever word you want to use, but it's like, okay, CEO, I'm going to go serve and, you know, get a lot of attaboys for like closing a deal, building something rad, you know, while also loving, leading, serving a home. Like for you, what have you kind of fallen back on to help you do both of those things?
Yeah, I try to be done. I get up early so that I can get early hours in, and then I try to be done by 5 or, thereabouts. I'm fortunate enough to work in a glorified shed outside of, the back of my house. So I'm, it's a
Yep.
double-edged sword. I'm very accessible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm present. That's kind of been a rule. I need the space and the separation, so I'm not in the house, and that's good for everybody. But just saying no, my lights. I've got Alexa, and it'll turn the lights off at 5:30.
You're done. So
So
Alexa's
that
like,
it's
you're
my
out.
trigger. My like, okay, 5:30. I need to be in the
And how do
house.
you, from that long walk commute home, how do you transition from work mode to dad mode? Because I'm still not always the best at it.
Well, Hosea, our youngest, is like a kick in the groin when you come in the door. There's a boom. All right, we're doing something. My teenagers, they're in their own world, and it's not, it can be very hard, especially if there's something that you're wrestling with or chewing on, and not bring it in the house. I don't know that I have been successful at that as well, because there's, oftentimes there's just like this latent stress around if there's something happening, but being done and just saying, no, I am done. This is my boundary, because I value my family. If I'm not present, I'm not there. I'm not dad. So it has been, certainly a learning experience. And I learned a lot what didn't work during our first marriage. So
yeah. Beautiful. Thank you. Okay. What is your relationship with your dad? You've already mentioned your dad, and here's how I'll ask it so you don't have to go like super deep in the weeds. But what's one thing you love and appreciate about your dad? And then what's one thing that you, quote unquote, would change? Like you would have changed this when you were a kid. Now, obviously, it's maybe shaped who you are today, so you wouldn't actually maybe change it, but they've kind of shaped who you are. How would you answer those two questions?
I think as I mentioned, he is the kind of the gold standard in my mind for laying your life down for your family at the drop of a hat. It didn't matter where you are. I've got so many stories that I could tell, but I was down at Pepperdine at school, and there was a fire in Malibu, which that's where Pepperdine is at. He happened to be down in the LA area on business, and he uninvited, jumped aboard a fire truck that was passing by after he had followed it past the barrier because he wanted to make sure I was okay. Breaking the law, people kicking his tires, like, get off the road, like, didn't care. he's going to find out how his son is. And I was fixing the TV, so I was fine. I was at the, the giant place where they had us all kind of evacuated down into. So, but, just would die, would die rather than not, make sure that he's taking care of his kids.
That's so good.
Probably one of my bigger regrets is he's not a guy of fun. Like, to him, work is fun. So it used to be every week for a couple of years, every Monday morning, I would go up with my littlest and we would work on their farm for, a day, and then come back and be, so 4 days a week I was CEO, and 1 day a week I was farmer Jeremiah. And he loves to work. And so he didn't have that fun kind of, like my older brother and my son Samuel. They're fun guys. They like fun. They like adventure. They like excitement, that sort of thing. So I probably learned from him that pattern of just work. I do enjoy work, but I've seen how, I regret not spending more time. I had fun with my kids, don't get me wrong. It's not like I've been full time at work, but I wish I had played more just for the freaking fun of it. And more fun things and been oriented fun. So that's probably something I would go back and change.
Yeah. Man, it's good. I asked the question because when our kids are 42 and 47, if they're asked the question, they're going to have an opinion of you and I and of every dad listening. So it's like, again, we're not trying to be perfect dads, but if we could lean into what is it our kids going to say about us? We have an opportunity to have an impact on that right now while they're, whether they're living in your home or they're not. What do you think the role of the dad is?
I think ultimately, like I said, if your kids are doing well, and what does that mean? What does it mean that your kids are doing well? To me, what it means is that they have surrendered their lives to Jesus entirely, that they've given them their yes, and that they're on the journey of continuing to give him their yes because they've tasted and they know he's good. So if I'm able to do that, then everything else comes in second place, right?
So I want you to keep talking about that, but what I hear when you say that, because I think if somebody had just kind of popped into the conversation right out the gate, they're like, oh, cool, another couple of Christian dads only concerned about their kids' salvation into heaven. And that's not what I'm hearing at all. And what I want people to hear is, when I hear you say that, Jeremiah, what I hear is my number one concern is that my kid knows who they are. And if it's anything other than tied to where they came from and what this whole big thing about life is actually about, then I'm not doing my job. This isn't about the family trip to Disneyland. This isn't about my kid successfully being married and having a job making X dollars and finishing college and buying a house, whatever. Okay, yes, I have some standards and hopes or maybe wishes about where my kids' lives will go. But ultimately, what you're saying is I want my kid to know who they are. And that's the role of the father.
Yeah, I would go a little deeper. And I would say that when you have met the creator of the universe and when you have given him your yes, all those other things follow. All of those things are natural consequences, or should be. I'm not a religious person. I'm going to put finger quotes around the word religion, or maybe I'll define what I mean by religion. In my opinion, when I say religion, what I mean is man-made constructs to perform in a way without God. That's really what religion is. It's a set of ceremonies. It's a set of do's and don'ts, but you can perform them completely devoid of relationship with God. So when I say that they've given Jesus their yes, that's a relational thing. That's not can you pinpoint exactly what salvation is truly? We're a bunch of kids talking about quantum mechanics, right? We have an idea, but we have no freaking clue.
Yeah. So how do you wrestle with, and maybe expand on this, you said the successful marriage and life and house and this, that, and the other. You didn't necessarily say that, but those are a consequence of having your identity with Christ. But it doesn't take away that my kid could get hit by a car, that my wife could get cancer, that my business could fail. So how do you wrestle with that, untying quote unquote success with Jesus having my yes, to use your words?
Yeah, anything can happen. I can come down with cancer. I can be hit by a car. Anything can happen. And the real question is, what is this life? What is it really? What's the nature of this life? Is there a creator? Yes or no? I believe science has overwhelmingly proven the fact that there is a creator whose intelligence so far surpasses our own that we can't even scratch the surface of it. Every day we're surprised at something new and amazing that we thought was super simple. Guess what? It ain't. So, is there a creator? Yes, there is a creator. Now, the real question is, what is their character and nature? What is the character and nature of the creator? Does the creator care about us?
Mm.
Right? Is the creator interested in relationship? And if all of those things lead you to the person of Jesus, then when you're walking the life, when your wife comes down with cancer, when your child falls from a rock wall and dies, we lost our 17-year-old nephew last year. We're going to attend my niece's wedding that
Whoa.
weekend, and crawls and dies. What's going to keep you rooted and grounded?
Mm.
What truth are you going to find other than the person of Jesus being not just this far off creator, but someone who's present and who meets you when you're sobbing face down on the floor, uncontrollably? All of this life, no one has any guarantees. The anchor that you can pin your life to and how you can actually navigate all of those things without going to drugs or porn or alcohol or women or whatever. I mean, you name it. All the ways that try to medicate this pain or the reality of this often crappy life or crappy circumstances in our lives. How do you navigate that without understanding the truth that this is a vapor, this life is a short, right? Take an eternal perspective on a long enough time scale, we're all dead, right? Every single one of us is already dead. So what is the between the start and the finish of that very short timeline compared to eternity? What are you founding your life on? What are you doing within that? And how are you orienting yourself to truth or not, or to lies? That's how I get to success. If I have met this creator, and if this creator has told me that he loves me, he's seen everything that I've done and he wants me, he died for me, that completely changes the way I respond when bad things happen. And that response, the way you're able to respond, leads to those other successes in life, whether it's financial success, relational success, whatever. But those are secondary in my mind to that fundamental relationship that his desire is proximity to me from the very beginning. That was the point of the garden. That's the point of all of this, is his proximity to us. So if I'm living outside of the intended purpose of my life, how is any of it going to end up being, looking good in the long run?
So when you say the role of the father, you're defining that as this is what a big portion of your opportunity as a father is to communicate and pass this from you to your children.
Yeah, it's not our job to kind of pretend to be a perfect dad, or because our children will look at us like, it's a very natural thing to look at us like a god or put us on a pedestal. And that's one of the things that I think you need to be proactive about, is confessing your shortcomings, being honest about your shortcomings with your kids, because then it gives them permission to as well,
Do you ever find yourself having insecurities in wanting to teach your kids these things? And I ask because I think some dads might be like, oh man, I wouldn't know it. Like, I wouldn't even know what to do if we opened up Acts or Matthew or whatever Proverbs and started reading it with them. I mean, I think that's a great place to start, really. It's like, kids, I don't know what's happening, but let's do this together. I think that's awesome. But have you ever wrestled with any insecurities around that?
Yeah, I think I initially, because my dad, he wasn't as maybe intentional, I wrestled against the idea of kind of coercing, or what in my mind I saw as like forcing or pushing. I came to the point that's just BS. That's just stupid. That's foolishness. If your child is going to go do something, you need to give them the manual if you've got it. So, and they're not going to want to read it, but wisdom says this is important and you need to at least understand it. You've got a free will and you get to choose what you do with your life. But as in my house, as your father, I would be not loving you if I did at least give you what I have. And for all the dads out there, like, to go figure it out. Use Chat GPT. It's brilliant. You can get lots of answers and they're really accurate because lots and lots of smart people were sourced in the building of it. So learn yourself. And if you're not going to be a student of the Bible, how are you going to expect your kids to want to be a student of the Bible?
So good. Yeah. Wednesday mornings, this is just a share because I think some guys, it's like, even if your kids have moved out of the house, you could invite them to something if you're wanting to do it. So, me and my 19-year-old, most Wednesday mornings, like today, we started going through the Lord's Prayer. So, like, we met for 45 minutes today, catch up, how's it going, and pray together. And then she went about her day, I went about my day. But it's like, if your kid's 2, then dude, start that cultivating that now. They won't know any different. If your kid's 13, just wrestle with it. And then if your kid's 25, invite them to do this with you. I mean, you never stop being a father. Okay, this podcast is Rebel and Create, or Fatherhood Field Notes, and you're doing it right. You're sharing your field notes with us. The mantra is Rebel and Create. What's something that you're rebelling against as a man, right? Like, I'm a man, I'm a warrior, I'm going to fight, but not just to be destructive and rebellious, but to create something in its place. So when you hear rebel and create, what's something you're rebelling against, and what do you hope to create in its place?
Yeah, I think rebelling against the status quo is not the right word, but there's a religiosity that I grew up with, that we have this idea of kind of, once everything's perfect, Jesus is going to come back, or I'll be acceptable when Jesus comes, or I'm sorry, when I get my act cleaned up. We as humans, we have this idea, this false idea, I think, of like perfection, what we're striving for. And you see it in a lot of man-made religions or works-based religions. I suffered from it for 45 years or so. And it wasn't until I really understood grace, and I know that's a very loaded word, and people probably don't even understand what I'm saying or what I mean by it, but I'm rebelling against behavior modification. I'm rebelling against a set of rules and guidelines that are absent a relationship with the creator, right? This kind of a man-made or man behavior centered Christianity. I even sometimes don't like to call myself a Christian because of how loaded that word has become now. What I'm trying to create, I suppose, is a much more authentic, real experience of saying yes to Jesus, right? Allowing him in, because it's his job to clean me up. It actually isn't my job to clean myself up. And that's, you go to any sermon and they may say that, or any church, and they may say those words, but all the other words they say the complete opposite. And that's where I found myself at. And so I think when I met you, it was shortly, a few months after what I call my avalanche had started. And it was just this peeling back of the years and the beliefs, the lies of that it's on me to make myself acceptable to God, that it's my responsibility. And I should have known better. And in my head, I wouldn't have said that maybe, but in my heart, I believed it. And so like God did this process of just, it was a complete avalanche.
Wow. Jeremiah, man, this has been so
That's
good,
exactly
so fun. I love
Yeah,
talking
thanks.
about faith. I love talking about fatherhood, marriage. Your story is just beautiful and so hope bringing, especially in this Advent season, man, when we're talking about hope and peace and joy and love. I mean, all the things that you've experienced in your life through the ups and downs and the messiness of it all. I would love, lastly, for you, you talked about sharing wisdom with your kids. You started a blog, essentially a place where it kind of housed some things. And I think what an opportunity that you have stepped into. What is that? How could another dad do it? What's the purpose behind that for you?
Yeah, I mean, the blog, it's nothing special. I wish I knew.life. What's the domain I got? For someone else to do this, like, seriously, it is so easy, especially if you've got kids of that same age, or you'd be looking. You just say yes, and you just start, and you figure it out. You put in the time. God meets you where you're at, and he does it. Like, it's his job. They're his job too. I just get to show up, and it's like, when you are working with dad, and you've got that nail, you got the hammer, and you're trying to hammer the nail, and it's going right. But by golly, I'm helping
Yep.
dad. That's the sense, and he's right there with you, and he's pleased that he has your yes. He doesn't care about the dang nail, right? Because he's after something so much more important, which is your heart. So you will meet him in a deeper way, and whether it's a Bible study and you figure it out with him, it is so easy, really.
It's almost like that nail is life. That's the point of life, is he's just pursuing our hearts through this vapor that we're experiencing at the moment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the website is iwishiknew.life, and that is where you're putting the things that you wish you knew in there for your kids. And that was
Mhm.
really what you started your Wednesday teaching, is like going through these things, and then you put
Yeah.
it on paper or blog so that they would
Yeah.
have it forever.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really even have a comment section or anything up. It's just
Sharing with your kids.
if you don't like it, you don't like it, that's fine. If you disagree,
But
that's
I think
fine.
what an opportunity for
Um,
dads to put that in for their own kids, to whether you journal it or
yeah.
you put in a blog, like what are the things that you want to teach your kids and how are you passing that to them? I think written format is
Yeah.
so good because, we are only here for a season and we don't have a guarantee for tomorrow. So what is it that you want your kids to
Yeah.
know? Jeremiah, this has been incredible. Any last comments or thoughts that you would share with a father before we wrap up?
No, I mean, other than it, we have the best
Mm.
father. Like, you have access to the best father, and you can tap into that if you want to, and you will get the results of tapping into that. So figure it out. Put on your air mask, first, right?
Mhm.
And then you will be able to go and help your kids do the thing.
I love it. Jeremiah, I look forward to further conversations with you, time to hang out. And I'm just so grateful for the man you are. I'm grateful for you fighting for your own heart with Jesus, for your wife, for your kids, and that you'd be willing to share it with us today. Dude, massive blessing to you this Christmas season. And I look forward to our paths crossing again in the future.
Yeah. Thanks, Ned. I appreciate you having me
My
on.
friend, peace. What an incredible conversation. Really, this time of year, we're in the Advent season on the Christian calendar. And so, this idea of hope is something we've been talking about in our home with our kids. And so, hearing Jeremiah's story of married, separated, divorced, remarried, I mean, that hope, there is nothing else I could really think about or lean into other than like a kid being sick and getting better. But this idea that hope, restoration, reconciliation is possible when we fight for something, it matters. My friend, if this conversation was helpful and you haven't done so already, please write a review. It helps spread the word that fatherhood matters. Take it a step further, send a link to this episode to a friend and say, hey, you're a great dad, and I think you'd love this episode. It's encouraging and it helps elevate fatherhood, which is what we're doing here. Thank you to all you dads out there listening to Fatherhood Field Notes podcast. What you do matters. Don't be like everybody else. Be yourself. That's who your kids, spouse, and community needs. This is your guide. Ned Shout. Together, let's rebel against the view that fatherhood has little impact, and let's create lives engaged in mastering the craft of fatherhood. I look forward to hanging out with you next time.